The year is 1994. Bill Clinton was just recently elected president. Beavis and Butthead has only recently premiered on MTV. I have yet to be born, and the assault weapons ban has yet to be enacted. You go to a gun show trying to buy a Glock 17. Well, they don't have any Glocks, but they have this new Smith and Wesson thing. Looks pretty close to a Glock. So, what is this? Why is this? And what's so controversial about it? Let's take a look. Let's start off by answering my question. This is a Smith and Wesson SW9F. Now, this came about in 1994. They had a meeting at Smith and Wesson. This is an anecdotal story, but I find it the best way to describe how this came around. And one of the head guys at Smith and Wesson said, "Hey, what do we have to compete with Glock? Glock is kind of achieving the popularity they're known for now. The Gen 2 Ed came out in 1988, and everyone was finding out that Glocks are astonishingly good pistols. And so he said, hey, what do we have to compete with Glock? What do we have this polymer frame, striker fired? And all the R&D and engineer guys said, well, we don't really have anything. So allegedly, he pulled one of these out. It could have been a 19 as well. Would have been a Gen 2 at the time. Slammed it on the table and said, well, how hard is it to copy? Using maybe more colorful language than that. And so they kind of did. This would have been a 17 round at the time. This is a later 16 round magazine. But it's really a Glock. Let's take a closer look here and zoom in a little bit so I can take these guys apart and show you how identical they are, some of the controversy involved, and what happened to these, because you don't see these all that often. Alright, so let's look at the external differences. So one of the first ones people notice is the slide release. That one jumps out to people. I find this one a little too big. If you shoot with a modern thumbs forward grip, you'll tend to ride that and make the slide fail to lock back. This is fine. It's big enough. Some people don't like it. I like it. The other one is the trigger safety type. This is a bladed, or excuse me, this is a bladed trigger. This is a hinge trigger. Excuse me. The takedown method is still the same. They both have one trigger pin. This would change later to the two frame pins up here. Excuse me, only one trigger pin. The grip style is a little different. This is smooth, but it still holds in your hand actually pretty well. Neither have an accessory rail. That was just the style of the time. This is the Smith and Wesson magazine. These would originally hold 17 rounds. This is a later one. You can tell by the thinner base plate and the fact that it's marked at 16. The older ones, like I said, hold 17. And the Glock magazine, of course, we all know they hold 17. It's in the name, Glock 17. Witness holes. This isn't a pre-band magazine, so this wouldn't be era appropriate, but it's pretty much identical. I think the shape of the feed lips or the feed geometry is a little different. I think I had a U-notch instead. So let's get into the mechanics and the details of what's different with the slides and the frames. So now that we have the gun's field strip, let's take a look at what's different and what's the same. Let's start with the slides. Oops, I believe I have them mixed up here. It's it's hard to tell. They're very similar. We'll get onto the lawsuit later. So you can see they're really similar. The extractors are very close to each other. This is the earlier type of extractor for a Glock. I think the new ones have a loaded chamber indicator. Well, you can kind of use this as one. They both use the same extractor plunger. Both have very similar back plates. I do notice this one is a little harder to remove because it is smooth, but it's nothing to write home about. Some of the differences you may notice, there is a hump in the slide here. No hump, and the extractor, the firing pins are a little different. The firing pin channel in this one is a little longer, and the firing pin, the sear engagement is a lot bigger. The slides will not quite interchange. The barrels are the same. They won't fit on the opposite slides. So let's get into the frames here, excuse me. Locking blocks are pretty similar. This one, it looks a little beefier on the Smith and Wesson on my left here. The Smith and Wesson has a different type of trigger return spring. I find that this is probably a bad design. It gets very carboned up. The ejectors are a little different. The Glock one isn't broken. They're bent like that on purpose. This one's straight. There's not a whole lot going on back here. The whole sear engagement area is a lot different. It's a lot further forward. Whereas on the Glock, this is what slips off the firing pin here. On the Smith and Wesson, see if I can, it's this up here. So it's a little further forward. That probably goes into the trigger. We'll get into that in a little bit. And something that I noticed as a little bit of a Glock nerd. This is a later 1996 dated Glock. So it has the relief cuts near the locking block to avoid the cracking issue. This was a high stress area, so it would kind of crack here. I don't know if it was a frame destroying issue or if it was a cosmetic issue that people were like, hey, I don't want my frames cracking. So they started doing the relief cuts. This is before the relief cuts, so I don't know if these would have a cracking issue. It does seem a little beefier. But that's something, I don't think anyone's shooting 30,000 rounds through a Smith and Wesson 9F. So I don't know if there's the data out there, whereas Gen 2 Glocks are shot to piss. Alright, let's talk about what happened, some of the controversy, and the lawsuit. So, what happened to these guys, and why don't you see them all that often anymore? Well, Glock sued, and Smith and Wesson settled. These were so close to Glocks that Gaston Glock had a pretty understandably harsh reaction. He said something along the lines of, if a robber were to steal my wallet, I would call the police, regarding protecting his patents. And I can't say I blame the man. Smith & Wesson settled. I believe it was around $5 million. Information is a little hard to find. I think they had to pay royalties. Again, information's hard to find. And they may have had to change a sear surface or location. I don't know if this is one that was changed, pre-change or post-change. I don't know if any of the SW9Fs got the change or if that is solely the SW9VE and the later pistols. But that's kind of what happened to these. This did start the Sigma line. I think it started it on a decent note. However, Smith & Wesson immediately tried to derail it with stuff like this. What is this? This is an SW380. So this is a copy of a Glock, and this is pretty much a copy of a Smith & Wesson version of a Lorsen or a Jennings or a High Point, like just a pot metal 380. It's really, oh god, straight blowback. The magazine releases these two. This magazine is completely broken. It's a testament to how well these are produced. There's no way to disassemble it unless you punch out the pins, which slowly destroy the frame because it's metal on plastic. And these are just garbage. So this tried to invent the Sigma line and make a name for itself, and that immediately tried to derail it. We'll talk about that pistol another day. So why in 1994 would you buy one of these? Well, in the end of the day, it was cost. These were priced several $100s cheaper than a Glock in 1994, and it's not a bad option if you don't have the money and you need a gun now. Then I think this is better than something like any of the mystery meat, you know, Saturday night special guns of the 90s, like the Lorsen, or like I said, a Jennings, any of that, even a 9mm like the Lorsen L9, pot metal. Just this would be only slightly more money. I believe these retailed for $200 or $300 brand new. So why would you get one now? Is the next question. Well, the answer is you wouldn't. You would get a Gen 5 Glock 19 or Gen 5 Glock 17, Glock 48, Glock 43, something like that if you wanted something like this. But if you're like me and you like controversial guns or guns attached to a lawsuit or weird 90s polymer then this is honestly a decent little option. It's not a bad shooter. If you get used to the trigger, it shoots fine. The sights are great. I find it very comfortable in the hand. It has more of a 1911 grip angle than the Glock does. But it's still, regardless of its reputation, an interesting piece of Smith and Wesson and early polymer frame pistol history. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope to come at you soon with another weird 90s pistol, this time a certain Grendel. Tune in. I'll see you guys soon.